Grandma put mustard on in any old design. Or try the hot stuff, light it up, let's get it on. It's like my brain is doing choreography. It's not all cut and dry, red onions and blue eyes, you see. You gotta be meticulous, you gotta be fastidious. Life is like a rodeo, and the fire that you stoke. Put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. Grandma, put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. I always did what I was told when I was young, but now I'm older, sometimes act like 21. Correct my attitude, feel better every day. I see the clearing skies and rain, rain go away. You gotta be meticulous, you gotta be fastidious. Life is like a rodeo, and the fire that you stoke. Put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. Damn right, put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. Damn right, put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. Damn right, put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. No holy grail to hold, there ain't no pot of gold. So give it all you got, just wind it up the throat. Fresh new reality, no living in a dream. And now I'm feeling strong, a brand new color scheme. You gotta be meticulous, you gotta be fastidious. Life is like a rodeo, and the fire that you stoke. Put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. Grandma, put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. Damn right, put some mustard on it, live as if you'll die. Red, white mustard, put some on it. With a crooked smile, live as if you'll die.
And that is My Wicked Twin. That is off the album Twin Turbo. That is a cool tune off one of My Wicked Twins albums. We just put out a new one today, which is one of their very first albums, actually, album number 2, Decibel Music, and it will be making its debut wherever music is sold. So check that out. And yeah, so very, very cool. So tonight we're going to continue on this conversation about luck. And what does luck have to do with success? Well, you know what? I posted something on Facebook earlier today saying that there is no easy path to success. As much as people will tell you there's an easy path to success, I don't believe there is. And here's a guy who is probably going to tell you the same thing. He is my partner in crime. His name is Sean McKenna from the podcast Bar Stools and Band Talk from the East Coast. And he's got his Bob Ross mints right there. There he is. Happy little tree mints.
Just remember, there's no mistakes. There's just happy accidents.
Happy accidents is all they are. Oh man. So we're we're going to be talking about what luck has to do with success, if anything at all. Right? And sort of going back to where we were last time, we were talking about that success is often the result of a combination of talent, hard work, and a healthy dose of luck. But what is that? What is luck other than something that someone sets up to happen?
You got to put yourself in the path of luck. I've had the opportunity to talk to some more people since we were last on the podcast, and the only thing that they say is lucky would be, and again, it's not even that. Meeting somebody that opens a door for you, but that's still, you have to be in their way to have that happen, right?
Sure enough, I agree with you 100%. When you think about putting luck in your path, that can be a number of things that you line up. It's kind of like playing, dominoes, right?
Yeah. I had the opportunity to interview Michael DeRosiers today, and if anybody doesn't know who that is, Michael is the not the original drummer for Heart, but he's the guy that played on Barracuda and all their hits before they kind of became the pop sensation in the 80s. And he got his gig because somebody saw him play at a bar when he was 23 years old, and they said, "We want you to come on audition." And he said, "Well, I'm not playing anywhere for another month." And they went to his house and watched him practice, and he ended up getting the gig with Heart. Um, because he was out in the middle of it and somebody saw him, and he was quick to point out. I asked him, "Is it luck?" He goes, "No, it was being in the right place at the right time." I don't think that's luck. I think that's opportunity.
Timing and placing yourself in the middle of an event, or at least placing yourself in a place where an event can find you,
Correct.
can be a life-changing thing for anybody.
It can, and it's funny as I get to meet different people that I've been interviewing for my podcast. I interviewed this other lady last night. Her name is Ingrid Fashing, and Ingrid has a Facebook page that's dedicated to the memory of Hal Blaine, who was part of the Wrecking Crew. He was one of the drummers that played on, Bridge Over Troubled Waters, California Dreaming, Be My Baby, all those hits that basically everybody knows. And some might have said that Hal might have had bad luck because I just said to her, it wasn't luck because he had a way. He was a very, very kind man, and he had a way of letting very bad people into his life that took advantage of him. So that's kind of making your own luck or bad luck, I guess, in a way. And a lot of people didn't know that, and she was very forthright with telling the story. So,
I just switched things around there a little bit. Going to
Yeah.
play some actual videos tonight, but they're going to be silent videos in the background from artists that are on the label. This is tonight. We're playing something by my Wicked Twin in the background. And I guess where I want to start tonight is start picking up where we left off, talking about those ingredients of the combination of talent, hard work, because those are important pieces of the puzzle.
Indeed.
And when you think about everybody talks about the power of luck and whether luck has anything to do anything or not. That's one of those weird things that I guess is unpredictable, because I believe luck, as we know it, can be a very unpredictable thing.
Um, Everybody that I talk to that's had any measure of success that is I guess, and success is different to each person, but in particular in the music business, they get to a point where they don't like the way things are going, and they try to network within a higher level of talent to figure out exactly how that group of people did it. And then once they're in there, they make the most of their network, and something comes up and they get a gig, and they make sure that they're prepared, and they go on to get the calls. they all say this when somebody says, "Oh, you're just lucky." They all say that that's kind of the words of somebody that isn't doing anything to put themselves in the path, and therefore trying to justify good things that are happening to somebody else and not them. And I was like, that makes a little bit of sense to me, because anytime those words have ever kind of come out of my mouth, it's usually because I'm not doing something to further my own cause.
Right. And I guess, when you talk about putting yourself in the path of luck, or the path, what I would consider the path of events, like there's always events that occur, and whether or not you can miss that event by a fraction of a second, and that opportunity is lost forever.
Sure, that's timing too, right? And that's the part that we talked about that you can't control. And you start talking to some of these people, and you start going, well, geez, that's convenient the way you're sliding that in. But a lot of them, they do these things, and they're just like rudiments of for drums or chords for guitars. They practice them on a daily basis, and they've got it's really the positive mental attitude sort of thing, but they're living it every day, and they're not hoping that something falls out of the sky and helps them out. They're making their own luck, if you will, and it's really fascinating when you get around somebody that's successful at a principle. It's interesting.
Yeah, there are some people that say, there is no such thing as luck, that you actually make your own luck. The same as you sort of set yourself up for your own successes or your own failures. Um, it's interesting. You watch people struggle and work hard to achieve something, and then it never seems to happen. Like it's just one of those things that somebody can work really, really hard, put all the right things together, and then whatever they're hoping for doesn't come together. There's something missing. It's one of those moving parts.
What a lot of these people that I talk to, though, they talk about, okay, well, maybe I want to be the drummer in a rock band and tour the world and do that. But then another opportunity comes up that, hey, do you want to go record? And I decide to not do that because I'm steadfast that I want to get on a tour bus or fly in a plane and tour the world. And I miss an opportunity that might be huge. And so a lot of these folks talk about the radar being up and how, you got to identify things that are presented to you. And a lot of people don't do that. I'm just as guilty. I have things that come up and I go, how did I miss that? Well, I missed that because I was too focused on something else, and it slipped
You
through my
know,
fingers.
it's a funny thing. There's a timing thing that occurs, and a timing thing can actually change the outcome of so many variables. Here's a perfect example. So, our daughter wanted a subscription this year to Sportsnet, right? So we're watching the opening Maple Leafs game tonight against
Uh,
Montreal, right?
did they put the cup parade out there yet? Did that
We're not even 4 minutes into the first period, and Montreal scores on Toronto. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But
yes.
here's the interesting thing: a pass goes out to a Toronto player. I can't remember who it was, but he falls on his keister, and as he falls on his keister, a Montreal player comes skating by, steals the puck, gets a one-on-one breakaway, and scores a goal.
But hockey's a game of mistakes, right? And whoever
Luck,
makes a
luck or opportunity. Luck,
uh,
opportunity. What was that?
I don't think that was luck. I mean, A, he's on the ice. B, he might have hit a run on the ice. He might have had a bad edge on his skate. He might have been nervous,
It
and
looked like he went off. It looked like he went to skate backwards and went off balance.
yeah.
And I mean, who knows? He could have hit a chink in the ice
Yeah.
for all we know. I mean, sometimes when they're making the ice, sometimes there's a chink somewhere in the ice and somebody finds it.
Well, and if anybody's ever played live music, you will know you can rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. And then you
Chink.
go live and you can have a blown monitor. You can, break a guitar string, or you can have an amp blow up, or you can put your stick through a drum head. Doesn't matter the amount of practice that you do. experience will get you through that. But everybody, when you experience it, it's like, well, geez, I didn't practice this. Well, what do? Do you just stop or do you go? That's again, somebody say, oh, well, that's unlucky. Well, no, it's not unlucky. I was pounding on the thing and I put my stick through it. Luck to me is it's a weird thing. I hate to say that it's used as an excuse when people don't get what they want, but just everybody that I'm around that says somebody else is lucky. If you look at what they're doing, they're really not doing stuff sometimes.
What do you think about this saying here? Is success luck, or is success the intersection of hard work and opportunity? Maybe luck's got nothing to do with it.
What is it? Success is when opportunity and preparedness meet.
Well, it says at the intersection of hard work and opportunity
Yeah.
is where you find success.
So hard work would be another. That'd be another topic for another day. Because somebody, I'm working hard. I'm working hard. I work hard, but sometimes I don't work smart.
Yeah,
And working smart is just as important, I think, or more important than working hard.
that's like the old story of the two hunters out in the bush, and they're dragging the deer,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're dragging the deer by the back legs. And Buddy says, if you grab the deer by the antlers and drag him out, he won't get caught on all the bush. It'll be easier for you to get out of the bush. And about a half an hour later, the guys are saying, man, I'm really glad we came across that guy who told us how to do that. And he goes, yeah, but my problem is we're getting further from the car.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's the thing, right? I don't know. It's so easy. It's so easy to, when you're doing something, to get tripped up by. I had a conversation with somebody the other day where he was so into something that he had planned out, and he had two people that told him, that's stupid. I said, well, what did you do? He goes, I ignored them. I was like, good for you, because um, typically people will let you go off on your merry way, and if you fail, they're like, I told you. And if you're successful, oh, I knew him when, right? So there's no really repose for anybody that's trying to do anything, because you never really get your prompts. I mean, it's just one of those things where you have to find people that are doing what you want to do and learn from them. And I don't think that luck has anything to do with that.
I've been guilty of saying, that you're really lucky sometimes.
Um, and it's an interesting statement. When we started Barstools, it was just a kind of a joke, right? And we were interviewing some people that we knew. And then Darby Mills was the first one to put us on the map. And then I had a friend who does sound for us, and we mentioned, somebody else had mentioned, geez, it'd be great if you could get Todd Zuckerman from Styx. Next thing you know, he makes the call for me, and we get Todd Zuckerman from Styx. And we start getting these heavy hitters, right? And it wasn't luck, because, I mean, we didn't sit around waiting for the phone to ring. We went after it.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that came out of another opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because, I think that my meeting you and you coming on the show and, working on the show, and then subsequently, with the record label, that is not anything to do with luck at all.
You have to, and I'm not talking if spirituality isn't your thing, or religion isn't your thing, or whatever. You do have to have some belief that the universe works in a certain way. And I'll give you an example. These little things here, some guy was selling them on Marketplace out here for $5, right? I don't know if you can see those, Ken. They're
I
little
see
drums.
those.
I've
Yeah,
got two of
yeah.
them. $5. So we go all the way out in the middle of nowhere. It took us about 45 minutes to get there. I go and I meet him. Turns out he's a marketing exec that used to do a lot of work for the beer companies, did a lot of work in the music industry, knew me from Barstools and Band Talk, and started telling me how he was blown away how some guy from Dartmouth that has no marketing experience was able to get such penetration in the marketplace. And, Michelle says to me, you were meant to meet that guy. It wasn't about those drums. It was about the fact that we went out there and met. And I believe that stuff happens, right? I wouldn't call myself a spiritual person, but people are put in your path, and some of them are good people, and some of them are bad people. It's up to you to determine who's what. Um, you know, but I say this all the time. I interviewed Michael today from Heart. I always say it's great when you meet somebody you grew up listening to, and they're not an a-hole. And Brent would be in that category. I mean, that guy's just been awesome since I met him. Um, so it's people come in your path, and you just got to figure out the ones that are there to help you and the ones that are to hurt you.
Yeah, and the cool thing about, Brent Dorner coming on board with us is that now we have an artistic director. We got somebody who's willing to provide artistic direction for artists that are on the label. So if you're looking for a consultation, we've got that available for you if you're on the label and you want some help with marketing yourself, looking at videos, making videos, and looking at different ways of making videos. Having, again, meeting Brent, and all that came about as a chance meeting from someone else. His name's JB Stryker, who started watching the show a while back and has been following me for some time and said, you know what, I really like what you're doing. Do you mind if I send some people your direction?
And very cool. So, I'll give you another example of something that where people. So there was a band from Ontario that used to come out here all the time. They kind of they played the same circuit in Ontario that Sven Gaui played. They were called Sire.
Remember it well.
Right. So I interviewed Doug. They were a band that I always joked around with Doug that they were Sven Gaui light, right? But they had great stage presence, great band. Anyway, last week I'm on Facebook and I'm looking at a couple of posts that come up, and there's this drummer, Jamie Constant. You know him because he's playing in Helix right now.
That's right.
Jamie used to be the drummer in Sire. I sent him a friend request and I said, dude, I went out and studied you when I was 17 friggin' years old because you guys came into town and I was just like, I thought I was the big wheel and I learned an awful lot when you guys came out here. That's stuff where, people come into your life and you got to choose what to do with it, right? I didn't have any problem talking to Jamie. Some people go, you get those opportunities. You got to do something with them.
You were saying, do you remember our conversation last week about drummers?
Mm-hmm.
You were gonna make a point last week. Do you remember what that was?
I say a lot of stuff.
Well, we were talking about drummers and I guess there's that old joke that always circulates around saying that there's musicians and then there's drummers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. And I was telling you, I think I was talking about how much value the drummer brings to any project.
I will argue to the death with somebody. Bad drummer, bad singer, bad band. Period. Good drummer, good singer, good band. And that's not to devalue anybody else's contributions because you do have to have talent that goes with that. But the countless stories of drummers not being able to cut it in the studio or they have to be replaced because they can't do it right. And so
I can think of a lot of bands that never use their own drummer on a lot of their tracks because their drummer could not play to a click track.
Let me tell you a great story that Ingrid told me last night. So Hal gets called in by Karen Carpenter's mother to record on "We've Only Just Begun." Remember that Carpenter's tune?
I remember that tune. Yep.
So they were trying to get her to record. And if you ever go on YouTube and see Karen Carpenter, she was an amazing drummer. However, couldn't bring what they needed in the studio. So they called Hal, who had, at that point probably had played on 2,000 or 3,000 smashing hits, right? And that was the point. And he went in there, he talked to her, and he talked to the producer. What do you want? He didn't go and fly around the drum kit. They asked him, he asked them what they wanted. He went in and he did it. And that's why a lot of guys get replaced because they don't bring that quality, right? They want to prove everything they can do. And oftentimes, that's not what's needed.
And that's not about luck. That's like having a skill set.
100%.
And
100%.
and I can't say enough about how much I depend on the skill set, not only of our drummer, but that of our bassist. And how the drummer and the bassist can build a chemistry together. Because
Well,
I think that's key.
it is. I've played with a number of bass players. I've been very fortunate. Very few of the bass players that I've played with haven't been able to do their job. I mean, very few. Might be one, might be two, possibly three. But when you lock in, when the drummer and the bass player lock in, and you've got a good singer, it just seems like everybody's confidence level just raises, and it's fun to watch. And that's why I always joke. I always get a kick out of when they say drummers aren't real musicians. Well, guess what? Here's what I'll say, and I don't mean to offend anybody if I do, but if you come out to Halifax or you go to any place where it's just two guitars and maybe a bass and people singing, there's an energy that's missing that isn't there because drums and bass aren't playing together. And you might hear the songs, but it's there's an energy that's missing.
Right. We got the chat room open. If you got some comments, some ideas, some thoughts on the subject tonight, please put them in the chat room. We'd be happy to respond to them. Speaking of drummers, you have to get Dorothea Taylor on the show.
I will, I promise.
She's the queen of drumming, man. This is a lady that's so disciplined with her drumming.
Oh, she's amazing, and she it's funny. I was out the other day and I saw a woman that was her absolute doppelganger.
You don't get on Jimmy Fallon if you're a hack.
Absolutely not. She had a video that went 90 million views viral, and it was a joke video about her going to audition for a band, and all the guys were like, "Oh, well, the other guys will be here in a couple minutes," and it was hilarious. And she goes in and just slays, right? I mean, she's the real deal. And such a nice lady. So I will definitely get her on.
Yeah, she'd be a really good one to have on. We're building something here. There's a tip jar right above my finger there. You can scan that QR code with your phone. You can hit the tip jar and support what we're doing here, because we're building something that is going to be exclusively for independent artists. When it's all said and done, TUNZ Records is going to be a record label owned by artists, for artists, but only independent artists. And my long-term goal is to have TUNZ Records is the premier download and streaming platform that people will go to find quality independent music.
100%.
And you and I have had this discussion a number of times. Does that have anything to do with the reason you want to jump on board with the label?
There's a number of things. Okay,
this isn't part of an interview, by the way.
No, and I get it. Sorry, I froze up there. I'll come back. One of the things that when you and I have talked a lot that I don't profess to even understand is the analytics piece, right? The numbers, how they work, except when I'll get a report on some of my socials and I'll see, in the last 36 days, here's how many people it went to, here's how many people engaged. Then I go, okay, that's pretty powerful. Those numbers I can get. But what you do with the analytics is something that's never been in my wheelhouse, and I find it fascinating, and it works, right? It works.
It's coming. I mean, getting better at it.
Well, yes, but I mean, you don't know how many artists that I talk to that they got it all figured out, right? They Google something on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, and they know how it works. It's super interesting how you always talk about numbers and views, and I was on a very, very, very famous band's site, and their subscriptions were somewhere in the neighborhood of 18, 19,000 subscribers, which for that's not huge, but it's anyway. They had videos on there that had millions of views. And so it's interesting that everybody has that sort of thing to get people to get out of the headspace of free and transition them to being a subscriber?
Yeah, and it's not purely about the numbers. Because, it was once said that you could have 5,000 dedicated fans,
Yeah.
and that's all you would need to be successful. So that part itself is not about luck. It's about networking.
It is. I two things that I can give you examples that I'm astounded. One, when I was in Ireland, somebody recognized me that was a radio personality and had me do an interview about bar stools and rim shots and all when I was in Ireland, which was very cool. The second thing was today, a buddy of mine by the name of Rob Mount. So Rob used to play drums for Lou Graham from Foreigner. So when Lou went solo,
Oh,
Rob was
yep.
his touring drummer.
Right.
Rob's a great guy. He goes down in the Rochester area. He just did a small tour with the Nelson brothers. Um, and Rob posted a video of him playing a song. And I said, you know what, man? Sounds killer. Way to go. Anyway, some guy goes on there. Are you the Barstools and Band Talk guy? Because I absolutely. And I go and I look at him, and he's from Illinois. And I'm sitting there going, holy smokes, man. Like, that stuff resonates with me. Um, you know, and you start to see the power of that when some guy that you've never met face to face is one of the people, one of your members, one of your subscribers. I mean, the first thing he said, "I subscribe to your channel. I love it." And
So the part of the analytic part in my skill set, and that's an acquired skill set, by the way. Like, I never really thought about analytics and, really diving into them and really analyzing them and exploiting them. In fact, you made a post on your social today, I believe it was,
yeah,
talking about some analytics for stuff that was going on regarding engagement.
yeah,
And I said, well, those are analytics that are ripe to be exploited or something like that.
that was a post from yesterday, but I don't know if you saw the post that I put on today because I've got this thing where I get so I do the link tree thing, so I basically get everything kind of spewed at me every 36 days if something cool is happening, right?
Right.
So I get this thing sent to me, and it was basically um, the top four things on all my socials that got noticed. And if I can find it, and if I can't, but essentially, it gave me, you know, here's who it reached, here's who engaged. And I don't know if you saw that or not, but it was absolutely crazy because, and I hate to use that word, but um, Michelle Ryder's video and release had
That's right.
over it,
It's going up.
and it had on all my socials, it had almost 6,000 in the last 36 days, almost 6,000 uh, reach, but it had almost 1,000 engaged. Right, so somebody goes, well, that's not good. That's actually amazing, right? So that one was actually had more engagement and more reach than Miles Goodwin, than a birthday party that actually wound up being faked by a well-known musician down here, um, and another piece. And so that's the stuff. When I see that, I go like, okay, I could dive into that. I can figure out how to use that, how to tell people, if you're doing something and you need to push, here's the reach that I have.
Yeah, and there's 4.7 thousand views of that video now on YouTube, and it keeps going up.
And so here's the thing that I am finding. So when that song was released last year, it was all me kind of pushing it, and it took a long time to even get like where for 2 weeks where it is. It's a combination of me pushing it, you pushing it, the label pushing it, people sharing it, and that's kind of the community teamwork thing. And that's another thing that I like, about the label is that I do get a sense of community from it, which is really cool. Like GM Black Talk today, he tagged me on a video that he had. It's the one where it's a cartoon one where he's driving in the car, and I shared it,
Right.
and it went out to 502 people. Like to share,
Yeah, and he's actually got a young fellow who's actually making shorts for him.
yeah,
And then he posts the shorts up on social media, and he's actually sent me some of the shorts. We're gonna be posting some of those shorts as well. I do want to come back to a comment back to the drumming story. Sasha Hubert, who is with Slant Six, who's on our record label, he says, "Bad drummer, bad tune, simple as that. Throws everything off."
Word to the power of 1 million. There's no question. And even if I wasn't a drummer, that would make sense.
I don't know. You if we keep going here, your head may just explode.
My head can't get any bigger, can it? Come on.
So as we get back at it, we talk about this whole business of luck,
Yeah.
and was it lucky for either one of us to have met one another? Was it destiny? Was it somehow you and I crossed paths with one another? I mean, how weird was that?
Well, I mean, I always talk about the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I had a post on it today. It actually wasn't this wasn't that weird because my buddy Greg was trying to do some stuff with Warren Sin, and Greg found you. Greg told me about you, and I'm like, well, flip me Ken's info because I'd love to talk to him because I was doing some stuff with the other label, but it kind of wasn't going the way that I wanted it to go.
Exactly.
Um,
Yep.
so, I mean, really, that was the 1 degree of Kevin Bacon because, if you're Kevin Bacon, Greg was the connector, and I mean, and there's another great example of networking. Greg did the work; he opened the door, and and we walked in, and that'll come back and help Greg at some point because whether Warrenson does another record or whether Greg does something on his own or whatever, that'll come back to help him too.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Those guys have a terrifically well produced album and have put out some great singles, and we're just not getting the traction or finding the audience for the music that I was hoping we're going to find. However, feeling the pressure in the last recent days has gotten over 2,000 streams. I'm going to say over the last 3 or 4 days. And I don't know if that's a result of hard work or luck or timing or what have you. All I can say is that I keep putting the songs out there and keep trying to find people to pick the songs up on playlists. And it's kind of like, this is the way I've always described it to people, is it's kind of like playing a one-armed bandit
Yeah.
at the casino, right? And you put the coin in and you pull. And sooner or later, that machine is going to pay out
Yeah.
if you stay on that machine. I've seen people get up and leave the machine, and then the next guy sits down, pops a toonie in there, and he hits the jackpot.
Well, there was a great meme that went out a couple weeks ago that I shared that basically the idea is just about when, right about the time you're going to quit, you should keep pushing on because if you quit, all your hard work will go by the wayside. If you push on, you'll have success. That's kind of the crux of it. And that's to your point. Oh my God, I just put $50 in this. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And then the $51 goes in and $2,500 spits out, right?
Now, here's the interesting thing. The album itself, The War Within, has actually gotten over 10,000 streams, the whole album.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, it got in front of, is that 10,000 individual people streaming that? As we get the analytics, of course, we'll delve into those analytics and take a look and see where those streams are coming from, because those are obviously the demographics. Those become the places that we look to try and get that music out even more. So if we're getting a lot of streams from Europe, for example, then I'm going to be trying to get those songs played on European radio.
I think that album too, and I mean, I know Greg very well. He's one of my very best friends, and I know Warren very well. And I think for both of them, in a way, that record was a win because it took them a long time to do it. Greg had kind of been out of the game for a while, And if you know Greg's story, he lost a ton of weight. He stopped drinking. He started feeling good about himself. Greg's always been that operatic kind of, I tell him all the time he should have sang with Yngwie Malmsteen. But I think regardless of whatever happened with that record, it was a win for them because they were able to get it out. They were able to do something with it and get it out. And I
I
think
look at
that,
that. I look at that album too, and while it's operatic, there's a real. It's like a rock opera.
oh yeah, no question. No question.
Listening to every track on that album is like I challenge anybody out there to actually listen to every single track one, all the way through to the end of The War Within. There are 14 tracks on that album, and every single track is extremely well produced, extremely well performed, and it's like going to the opera and watching the opera going from one movement into the next.
No question. And again, back to the win, because a lot of people don't, I listen, I shouldn't even be saying this or try to give speeches on it. I tell people all the time back when I was trying to get the record deal in my 20s, and I didn't take the time to actually enjoy what was going on because I was just trying to get to the next gate, the next gate, the next gate. Then the whole thing friggin' fell apart, right? Um, but I've known Warren Robert, I swear to God, since high school. That guy has been a step above most people since I've known him, and he's very driven. But Warren wants to do things a certain way, and for them to get that album out was a win for both of them. No question.
It's funny because when Greg and Warren came to me and talked to me about releasing the album for them, it had come out in July of 2021, so a little over almost 2 years ago. 2 years ago that it came out, and we re-released that album, and it's funny because when they came to me, I said to Warren, I said, what are you coming to me for? I said, you got, what do you got? 300 sync licenses. You got all kinds of music that's published anywhere and everywhere. You work with some of the most famous people in the world. And you've got music that is on movie scores. Why did you come to me? And he said, well, we're pretty convinced that you're a digital marketing genius of sorts. Something
Well,
along those lines, right?
Warren is an amazing musician. I never said he was smart. That I no, I'm just kidding. No,
I,
you know what? But here's the thing. He plays with Miles Goodwin, or he played with Miles Goodwin. He's done some country stuff. He's played for TV. He's done all that stuff. He's been around the block, right? So, and he's had some good stuff happen to his career and some bad stuff. Warren's one of those guys. He absolutely thinks about everything before he, moves 2 feet. So, for him to say that is pretty impressive because he's also like a 8th degree black belt in a bunch of disciplines. Like he trains police officers to.
Here's the whole thing. It comes back to this whole idea, is he successful because he's lucky, or is he successful because he's talented? Because, on so many different fronts, Warren has a bunch of different talents.
100%. So there's another thing too that I think if you take the topic of bodybuilding, which has always kind of made me go, there's people that go to the gym and work out 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 and never gain form, never gain shape, never gain mass, never gain bulk, whatever. Then there's other people that go and they have genetics that they can lift a weight for. That's me. Like when I played sports, I had to get my pants custom made. I had the genetics to, and I used to go to the gym and I didn't like the way I was bulking up. So I'm happy being a scrawny old man now. But those are things.
I am a Hans and he is Franz, and we are to pump you up.
Right. But my point is there are certain gifts that you get, and it's
sure.
if you want to call it luck, well, the only luck would be, your grandfather and grandmother met, or great great grandfather and grandmother met hundreds of years before you were even around, and that kind of funneled through. So, okay, maybe that's luck. I don't know. Um, in the case of Warren's very good at picking things that interest him, then excelling at them, and that's what he
I
does.
yeah, I also think people are born with certain talents, like innate talent. So when you think about innate talent, you know, does that have anything to do with luck? I mean, being born at the right place at the right time,
Uh,
right?
maybe. I mean, it's
There's
possible,
that's an uncontrolled variable.
but does that not get back to timing, which you can't control?
That's right. I mean, when your mom and dad finally got together and decided you were going to be born, that's when it happened.
On For some people, that's another whole topic where you go,
That
how
it could be
did
a
that
whole
happen?
nother topic.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
um, no, and I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, you know, uh, I've talked to a number of people that had ties to the grunge movement, that Nirvana and that whole thing. In Halifax in 1993, Sub Pop Records signed all these guys, and they were getting froze out of major deals. So they started coming to Halifax and signing bands. Guess what? I wasn't one of those bands that they signed because I wasn't doing that. And timing for me friggin' sucked. However, I chose to not do that. Therefore, I didn't get looked at. My choice. I can't say they were lucky, because if I wanted to actually do that, I would have done it better than anybody. But I didn't want to do it. So
Yeah, I mean, anytime I've ever been in a band, I always felt like I was working the hardest of anybody, not because for bragging rights, but because I always felt that I had to step up my game all the time.
yeah, I mean, so I guess you gotta look at your motivation, because again, Matt Starr, I follow him, and Matt always talks about, if you're in a band and it's not going where you want to go and you're the hardest working guy, you got to move on to something else. That sounds brutal, but you can only pull people along for so long, right?
Yeah.
Before frustration sets in, before maybe some of their poison ideas kind of start to fester in your own brain. And it's tough to. Everybody's been in a band, and you could ask Brent this. I guarantee you're in that high school band. We're gonna make it. We're gonna go to LA. We're gonna sell 1 million records, and we're gonna be that band. And it rarely, if ever, happens.
I I always wanted to be sort of the weakest link in any project I was involved with, because I believed in playing with musicians that were, exponentially better than me. It made me work harder. It made me want to work harder.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I think never wanting to be the weakest link. I mean, I won't name names, but some people I know have got into bands and they're fine with being the weakest link, because maybe they
I,
just want to be along for the ride. But
and I'm fine with that. That I've always considered myself that. Maybe other people don't. It's really funny. I played with a bassist a little while back at a gig, and I haven't played with him for like close to 10 years. Right? He got together with us and played this gig because our regular bassist was off doing another project, and this was a by chance motorcycle event we got invited to play at, and I did it as a favor to a buddy. So he said to me, just right out of the blue, he said, "I cannot believe how much your guitar playing has improved." He said, "You become a completely different guitar player than you were 10 years ago."
right,
And he said, "I mean, all for the good. You're doing things that, back then you didn't seem to have the confidence to do. And now," he said, "you just do it with so much grace and confidence. It's like it's built into you."
um, and I understand that, because a guy that I play with in the Frequency, Bennett Buell, said that to me 2 months ago. I've never heard you play better. You've leveled up. It's a whole other thing. Um, but I've been doing the work, because you know what? I get to the point where um, I like some of the stuff that I was doing, but I just decided that, you know what? If I'm going to be this big wheel that goes around telling everybody how great I am, I better be able to back it up. And
Okay,
but it's nice when it gets noticed. I've seen
false
friends.
or false or true. I heard tall salespeople are more successful than shorter salespeople.
I was in corporate sales for almost 20 years, and I'm 5'10", so I don't know if that's true or not.
I have no idea. Is it because taller people are more intimidating?
Mm,
Um,
I think sales is one of those funny things. There's certain. I used to have people that when I did corporate sales, I always said I couldn't teach somebody because I'm not duplicatable. Like in the franchise business, franchise is about duplication. I'm not duplicatable. My style works, but I can tell you one time we were in a boardroom and somebody's like, who's making phone call, or cold calls, and nobody put their hand up. I said, go get me the phone book, and we put the phone book, and I just started calling people. They're like, what?
right.
How can you do that? I don't know any of these people. What are they going to do? Jump at me through the phone? No. Um, but that makes people nervous, right? And not everybody can do that. But I don't know. I've known an awful lot of tall salespeople that suck. So I don't know if that's true.
Well, it was just it's an aside. Maybe it's an aside, but I do think that there are different qualities that people bring. Part of that could be stature. I mean, when you for example, you said for example you're 5'10".
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever played with a drummer that tall.
Well, Michael DeRocher from Hart Michael is almost 6'7".
Yeah, I mean, most of the guys I've ever played drums with are like five, somewhere between 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", right around in there.
It's really funny. I used to hear like Mark Karazan from Brighton Rock. Mark's a little fellow, like he's about 5'4", and just a powerful, powerful player. And I remember a couple guys going, "It makes no sense. He's too little." Well, you know what? It doesn't matter, man. If you get a big heart, it doesn't matter how tall you are. Gil Moore from Triumph was like, 6'5", 6'6", and all arms and stuff like that. But you make do with what you got, man. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, if you saw our drummer Mike, Mike's all a small guy. He's like 140 pounds soaking wet, but he's solid muscle.
Yeah.
And man, I always say skinny little Italian boy can really hit the drums.
Well, I mean, again, good on him for if anybody ever said to him, "Little guys can't do it," I think that's total BS, man.
Well, and he's still doing it, and he is, he's hovering up towards 70.
It's hilarious because one of my favorite probably my all-time favorite drummer is Eric Carr from Kiss, and Eric Carr, they list him at different heights, but 5'7" is what I'm told he was.
Yeah.
And he played that huge stinking kit, like and just a lot of heart and a lot of chutzpah, I guess they call it. And
Well, Peter
um,
Criss isn't that big a guy either.
nope, Peter Chris is about 5'8", maybe.
Yeah, or well, maybe with his boots on. He's a tiny guy. He's not that big.
Nope, nope.
Um. Anyways, I mean, does that have something to do with it? With luck? Is luck about being born in the right place at the right time with the right set of circumstances, or is it again the result of a number of uncontrolled factors that make up part of what we call luck?
So again, I'm going to go back to Matt Starr because he always talks about the universe working in certain ways, and people used to say speak stuff into existence or whatever. Matt's got this theory that this marble is spinning around and there's all kinds of stuff that's happening, and if you go get your piece of it, you're going to get your piece of it because you're doing certain things and applying certain principles. Um, all that aside, if you don't believe in it, fine. But you being born at a certain time, really, scientifically, how does that have anything to do with luck? Really, that's a tough one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of uncontrolled variables that come together that could make up as part of luck, right?
Well, I was joking around about this. Have you seen the documentary on him? Have you seen the documentary on him?
No, no.
Go see it because you want to talk about a man who his passion was basically being nice to people and entertaining, and got royally screwed out of his entire, not only him but his family. Um, that wasn't luck. That was his own doings. Oh, he's unlucky. No, he's not. It was his fault. You hate to say it, but I mean, there's a lot of things that he let into his life that you know took his wealth away.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this whole concept of luck, and again, this is something that we could just beat to hell over a period of time, because luck has, to me, or what we call luck, has so many variables that can come together. One of those being at the right place at the right time, having the right skill set, having the right amount of talents, having the right contacts. I mean, there's so many of those variables that come into play. And sometimes we take those variables for granted. For example, there are some people who have innate talents that they're born with.
Yeah,
And being born with those innate talents, they automatically have a leg up on someone that's not born with those innate talents.
that's fair.
So that's the difference between cultivating something and building something from scratch.
Yes, but I get. Huh.
And I see guys like that all the time that are extremely gifted, and you can tell. Some people don't even think about it themselves. I've had this conversation with musicians that I consider to be extremely gifted.
Okay, so take my favorite band in the background.
Right.
So before them was the New York Dolls. Before them, there was a bunch of people in the '60s that were doing the kind of the makeup thing. They probably took the comic book thing to another level, but Bowie was doing a bunch of stuff. I think what broke them more than anything, because it wasn't their playing; they weren't amazing players. God, I love Kiss, but it wasn't like they were the best players.
No.
However, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley were so driven that Gene would take a job at an office so he knew he could get access to a printer and print flyers for shows. And the great thing where they would print up a bunch of T-shirts and give them to girls, and they'd be in the front row, and they'd have this built-in audience that didn't exist, but people thought they did. It's the old Barnum and Bailey, Carney Huckster sort of thing, but they were willing to do some things that other people weren't, and they took an idea that was really probably already there. So was that luck? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I think they were crowdsourcing before crowdsourcing actually became a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who used to work for Sony Entertainment, and they actually used to hire people to come in an audience. They got hired and they got free tickets to the show.
Yeah.
And they got pretty much free reign to go out in various areas of the show and mingle with would-be fans. And their job was to talk up the artist.
Yeah.
Their job was to push what was going on the floor, to get people really, really excited about, and those people would be circulating the audience while the warm-up band was on stage.
Listen, that's the stuff where, I remember opening for a number of different bands where you might have road crews that are hard to get along with. I could think of one band I won't name, but we were doing a show and their road manager basically said, "Well, you're not doing this," and I said I was nose to nose with them out on Barrington Street in Halifax. Well, that's fine. Then guess what? You're not doing. You're not using the lights that I paid for this week,
Right.
and we came to so. I guess it's how willing you are to push the goalposts out in order to get what you're looking for.
Right.
But again, it's luck to me is if something was luck, that basically everything's the price is right all day long, where you're spinning that wheel, and you know what I mean, like.
Right. This isn't Warren Beatty, the actor, but he says exactly, I think anyone can set their course to success, but if they don't have the tools, the vehicle, and the drive, they'll never get out of the driveway. Good timing and positive attitude is more effective than luck.
So I'll tell you something about Warren Beatty. I've known Warren since probably 1988. He's from St. John, New Brunswick. Um, does a lot of playing down there, and I met Warren. He was playing, and we were playing in rival bar bands. Um, and he would tell you, especially in our scene, the people that hustled and met the right people were the ones that kind of got forward and did some things. And um, he and I were both in different bands that had a lot of success in the bars because we kind of wouldn't take no for an answer. And there was an awful lot of people that used to say, "Oh, they're lucky." Well, no, we just worked our tails off, and Warren's still doing that. I mean, if you've been to St. John, great city. I love St. John. I play there all the time, but it's not. I wouldn't call it a behemoth of bars. I mean, they've got the Imperial Theater that is incredible, but they got to do some traveling. They can't just play in their own hometown, and so Warren had probably he just backed up what we're saying here. It's drive. It's.
Yeah, and when you talk about talent as being one of those ingredients, I mean, you have to be willing to cultivate that talent, right?
Yeah.
Because Sasha Hubert says on here, practice or its talent gone to waste.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that.
And I think it's really important that when people are thinking about, is something lucky or am I lucky or is this a lucky event? I think you have to really sit down and think about what brought you to that particular point.
And something always does.
And there's always something that takes you there. That whole we talked about that intersection between, things like talent and an event, right? That brings you to that point. And I think it's very important for us to step back and re-examine what we did. What were our steps? How can we replicate that again?
It's a great point.
Because if we learn to replicate those things that move us towards a point of success, then, for example, certain things, I look at success in what we're doing, for example, with the record label, as being various plateaus of success.
Yeah.
So something happens, and sometimes it's not me that notices it. Somebody else outside the record label that points it out to me and says, well, that's pretty good that that's happening. And I'm so focused on the end goal, sometimes I lose sight of the short-term goals along the way and go, wait a minute. For example, up until last year, we probably had about 20 artists on the label. We're up to about 31 now.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those artists were not active. And of course, for those that were active, COVID knocked the crap out of that.
Yeah.
And when I looked at what we were doing and bands that were putting out new music, during the whole COVID event and all the other stuff that followed, this year our total streams from all of our artists is in the millions now.
Yeah.
And so, there's one band on my label I can't figure out. They haven't been active for years. In fact, since we uploaded the very first album, the band basically broke up. The drummer moved away. But that album I think has somewhere around 1 million streams now.
There you go.
It has it made a lot of money? No, not really. But it's been out there and it's still getting activity, which just, shocks the hell out of me sometimes. And collectively, I have to take a look at those numbers again, but I think we're, into the millions of streams now collectively from all the artists. Some of them have hundreds of thousands of streams collectively between all of their releases. And I think another thing that we're finding success in, and again, I don't think this is pure luck. This is about finding
The formula.
or opportunities, right?
Yep. Yep.
So the one opportunity that I think we found here is that that mostly everything that happens on Spotify and every place else is very much content driven these days.
Mhm.
So if you're not putting out new content on a regular basis, you can become irrelevant pretty quickly.
No question.
Warren's last comment on there. So what you're saying is that they need a drummer.
Me before you, bud.
Well, we're at the top of the hour now, and I think it's probably time for us to end this conversation for tonight. But I think it's something that probably should continue. I don't know. What are you thinking there, buddy?
I think it could go on forever and ever and ever.
Well, next week I want to talk about a few things. I mean, we can continue with the conversation about luck, but there's a few things I want to add in next week, and I want to quickly share those on screen very quickly and see if I can find. So I'm going to go to my chat and stuff I sent this is stuff I sent myself,
yeah.
right? So you can see this ad here for the Indie Bible,
Yeah.
the ultimate music industry directory. And then this guy here want to say goodbye to background gigs. And he goes on to talk about how you can sign up for his course or book or whatever for success. Here's another one, the profitable musician, Moonstride Media Marketing, Imperium Network, and the list goes on. So these are all these people out there trying to sell you success.
Mm-hmm.
And I really haven't heard from anybody that's been successful in using any of these. And there's one on there that talks about, how you can get all these playlists. Well, so I decided to do a little experiment, and we'll talk about this next week. And I want to set it up for next week's conversation. I did a little experiment, and I tried using their playlist curators lists. And I haven't found one playlist curator who will play music without you paying them to do it.
The old art of payola.
That's right. So we're gonna get into that next week, because that's such dirty business, and it has no place in this industry. It was bad for the mainstream music industry. It was one of the worst things that ever happened, because it didn't have anything to do with talent. It didn't have anything to do with luck. It had to do with how much you were willing to cross someone's palm to get your music played.
Well, I'll end with this. I get approached all the time from people of, I love your podcast. I've looked at it. There's some stuff that I can do to help you. La 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 la. And you go and you kind of look at what they're doing, and it's like, okay, well, but you've got 90 million viewers watching you knit sweaters in your underwear. I don't do that. So how can you teach me to have my podcast do that? Like it makes no sense, right? So, and the problem is people get hooked. There's a good example. They get hooked into the numbers, and it's like, this guy's going to help me get over that hump. Well, he's not doing anything that you're doing, and you're going to pay some money and probably not see the results that they're bragging about.
That's right. All right. I don't want people to forget about the tip jar. We're starting a thing here, okay? We are on a fundraising mission to build TUNZ Records
There it is.
as the very first all independent music download and streaming platform owned by and run by independent musicians. And that's the direction we're going. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And Sean, next week we're going to be maybe into part 4 of What's Luck Got to Do with It, but we're going to talk about the good, bad, and ugly of the music industry as well next week. So maybe we're going to move into the good, bad, and the ugly. And who knows, maybe we'll put a little clip up for
Well,
people next week as a visual.
I've got some uglies I could personally impart that would be mind bending. You want to be a musician, do you? You're willing to do this?
Well, it's not without hard work, and it's not without a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Sean, as always, Sean McKenna from the podcast Barstools and Band Talk, Rim Shots with Sean, part of Side Hustle, Michelle Ryder and Side Hustle. Check them out if you're on the East Coast. They play all over the place out there, and they'll be in a town near you. And remember, I'm Kenny, and you are not. This has been the Indie Show. Have a great night, everybody, and have a great